So if you've been a long-term shareholder in Facebook stock, it's no secret, you probably know that this stock has underperformed its other big tech peers. In the last 5 years versus the other big tech names, we can see that Facebook has returned 150% versus the others returning between 200 and 400% in the same time period. Now don't get me wrong, 150% return is still outstanding, and if you were invested in Facebook during this time period, that's a great return. Give yourself a pat on the back. However, when you look at these other names, you're thinking, I could have just put the same amount of money into like Apple, Google, Amazon, whatever, and done much, much better. Yeah, that's true. Hindsight's 2020. But does that mean that we should sell our Facebook stock today? One thing you need to understand is that past performance does not dictate future performance. So just because Facebook's underperformed in the past does not mean it's going to underperform the next 5 years. You got to separate that, you got to think objectively and look at the facts today. In my opinion, it all comes down to valuation. Does the valuation for Facebook warrant us to buy more of the stock today? Or maybe the valuation is poor at this time and it makes sense to sell out of this stock. In this video, I want to address that. I want to talk about the valuation because at the end of the day, that's how we make our investment decisions, and we want to understand if this dip that we're seeing in Facebook stock today, down quite significantly, is a buying opportunity, or if it's time to dump our shares and move on. So I'm going to make this clear up front. I own Facebook stock. I am bullish on this company long term, and today, in my opinion, is possibly presenting us a buying opportunity, and I'm going to show you exactly why. But before we get into like the full fundamentals, the facts behind the business, let's talk about what happened today, why Facebook's in the news, why is the stock down so big today. So a whistleblower came out on the 60-minute interview last night and exposed some details around Facebook on how it prioritizes profits and growth over anything else, including the well-being of mental health. In a quote, she says that Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, clicking on less ads, and as a result, Facebook would make less money. Facebook's bread and butter, guys, is advertising, as you can see here, so obviously this is something that is critical to Facebook's business. Anyways, all of this has led to once again to the infamous hashtag delete Facebook trend all over the internet like Twitter. And adding to this chaos, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, all of Facebook's products are all down today with outages, and as of recording this, we don't have any reasons as to why or a timeline for a fix. Needless to say, this has not been a great day for Facebook shareholders, and even people who utilize Facebook's platforms like WhatsApp or Instagram to communicate with others. It's not been a great day. As of recording this video, Facebook shares are down around 5.5% on the day, and this comes just a month after hitting new all-time highs, where the stock is actually sitting in total now down 15% in this aggressive sell-off. So investors, they seem to be quite serious here about dumping their Facebook shares, selling out of Facebook and moving on. And there's definitely fear out there. There's definitely a lot of negative press. There's definitely, some justification as to why people may not want to own this business anymore. And really at the end of the day, it comes down to a possible reduction in their earnings going forward. Now, if there's any effects from all of this, side effects where advertisers pull out or less people use Facebook or whatever it is that will affect their earnings directly, it won't be seen in their upcoming earnings report for Q3. It'll actually be realized in Q4, but I assume that they will address it and talk about it in the next earnings report. So now let's jump into the actual facts about Facebook, the business, and let's look at the numbers behind all of this to see if this is a buying opportunity or not. So this year, Facebook is expected to grow by 39%, and next year is expected to grow to close to 20%, hitting over $142 billion in revenue. Earnings are expected to grow significantly as well during this time period, hitting new highs as well. Gross margins for Facebook are incredibly strong, sitting at over 80% every single year. The forward PE for this business, which is something that investors use to value this, is sitting at around 21 and actually will be even lower after today's sell-off. And the price of sales, if that's a metric you want to look at, is around a 7, which again should be lower after today's prices. The reason I included price of sales is because a lot of people like looking at this metric for high margin software-based businesses. Now, in terms of their balance sheet, they have $64 billion in cash, $80 billion in current assets, and $170 billion in total assets. Liabilities are very manageable comparatively, only $15 billion in current liabilities, $11.4 billion in long-term debt, and $32 billion in total liabilities. Facebook could clean out this balance sheet with the cash they have on hand and still have upwards of $30 billion sitting in cash to do whatever they want with. And cash is really not a problem for this company. They generate so much free cash flow annually that they have too much money that they know what to do with nearly $25 billion in free cash flow last year. So those are the high-level facts on Facebook. You cannot dispute any of this data because it's what Facebook has reported and it's what they're projecting in the future. That's just a fact. Now, will some of these numbers be affected because of this? Of course, future revenue could drop, future earnings could drop. But the question is that going to be a long-lasting effect or something just short-term? Well, the thing is, that remains to be seen. In my opinion, I think this is kind of a medium, short-term kind of problem. I think Facebook will get past this like other issues that they have in the past. However, the question I always come back to and I ask myself is, what do the fundamentals say about Facebook today? To me, it shows that Facebook is well capitalized to bear this short-term pain, to go through this negative news cycle that the company is facing and still come out stronger and on top. The fact of the matter is that there is no better platform for advertisers to target their ads to specific users or groups or individuals, because Facebook has so much data that their users like you and I share, which helps advertisers target the people they want to and as a result make a ton of money on. So while some advertisers may temporarily pull their ads from Facebook, for publicity, for face, they can't really support a company that's evil, can they? I think over time they'll kind of sneak back in there because they know by not advertising on Facebook, they're missing out on a huge chunk of the market and really the best platform to advertise on. Now, quick history lesson, those of you that held Facebook back in 2018, remember Cambridge Analytica. This was huge news back then, it rocked the share price, and it was really the first big negative news that came out that addressed Facebook and the issues with Facebook and the concerns that people had on Facebook. And of course, it started the trend, delete Facebook. This scandal actually resulted in the stock losing a quick 15% of its value. And really anywhere you went, like I said, you see that trend, that hashtag delete Facebook. Now the question is, what happened since then? Well, Facebook recovered and it's up over 100% since that low, despite the most recent sell-off that we're seeing. What does this tell me? Well, the first obvious thing is that Facebook is affected directly by negative news, like most businesses. But for Facebook, they seem to see a lot of negative news quite often. This of course drives the price down in the short term. It takes longer for the stock to consolidate and start moving higher again. And this is a big reason why it's underperformed its peers. If we didn't have these negative news cycles, which literally take months to recover, the stock would be much, much higher today, probably on par, if not higher, than the other big tech names. The second thing that you have to realize about Facebook is that these delete Facebook trends happened before, it's happening right now, and it's going to happen again in the future. It's just the nature of this business. People really like this product or they really hate this product, and that's just kind of a reality you have to accept as an investor. Now, the third thing is that no matter how much you may dislike the business or disregard the business or not want to invest in this, you cannot ignore the fundamentals of Facebook. You cannot ignore what we talked about with their balance sheet, their free cash flow, their growth, earnings, margins, everything is just so strong for this company that over time, investors will come back, and over time, investors will push the stock much higher when they seek value. You can ignore the stock right now because, it could trend lower in the short term. There's a lot of negative news. Everyone hates Facebook right now. So yeah, maybe lower prices are warranted for the short term, but does that mean that Facebook deserves a suppressed valuation over the long term if they still generate a ton of cash, if they're still very profitable, they keep growing? In my opinion, I think investors will come back sooner or later. Now, I think that in this current news cycle that we're seeing, it's going to take a little bit of time for Facebook to come back. I don't think we bounce back as quickly as we did with previous dips in Facebook. So I wouldn't necessarily say this is going to be like a sharp V correction. I think it's going to take time for things to base out, consolidate, and then eventually start moving higher. For example, if we look back to Cambridge Analytica again in 2018, we can see it took around 2 months for the stock to recover back to prior levels, but then with their earnings report later that year, the stock took another huge hit due to things like advertisers leaving the platform. They issued a statement here saying that they were lowering guidance on the company on slower growth, and as a result, the market adjusted for it. So could we see the same thing happen again here? Could we, see the stock sell off, start to recover, earnings comes out, then boom, we see lower prices again? It's possible. It's possible because investors are looking at optimistic future growth on this business. They're obviously discounting it a bit after today. But if Facebook comes out and says, hey, you know what? Maybe we're not going to grow next year 20%. Maybe it's going to be 10%, 5%. Maybe it's going to be flat next year. Then investors are going to be like, okay, well, this is not really a growth name right now. I want to put my money in growth name. So they sell out of Facebook, put it into some other stock, and that could result in lower prices short term. Now, if you believe that Facebook, is going to get past this and they're going to start growing again in the future once this whole negative headline is going to be past the company, people forget about it, then all signs really point to this being a buying opportunity. I'm pretty confident here as a long-term investor in Facebook that over the long term, I'm going to make money on the stock. And over the next few months, sure, it could hurt me. I could be down and I may underperform the market. But that's kind of the reality of owning the stock. I've accepted that. I've come to terms with that, and that's just how it's going to be. Short term, remember, news, emotions, that kind of stuff drives the stock price. Long term, fundamentals drive the stock price. So I think investors will come to their senses sooner or later. Who knows how long it takes. But to answer the question, is this a buying opportunity or time to delete Facebook and sell the stock? It's clear that my answer is it's a buying opportunity. Anyways, guys, hope this video is valuable. If it was, hit the like button down below. Share this video on Facebook with a friend if it's back up by now. But either way, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to invest positively, and I'll see you in the next one.